we, the Palestinian people, have become the victims of the victims. Now, who are the original victims is the Jewish people. And now we are the victims of the victims. But who is the victimizer? Weaponizing the Bible against us. As if God has given land and God was a state agent distributing land. God doesn't do that. God gives land to people equally. And God looks at all people equally.
Pre-1882, the Jewish population in Palestine was something like less than 1%. I think a lot of it has to do with identity, right? I mean, pre-1882, the Jewish population in Palestine was something like less than 1%, right? And Israel now, the argument from the PLO is also displaces and excludes Palestinians on the basis of race and identity. Many Israeli organizations affirm their Jewishness as a key element of what's going on here. And we talk about an Israeli-Arab conflict more widely. So I think it would be inaccurate to not allow identity to play part of the story and try and help that explain what's going on here, surely.
Well, the moment you start thinking in supremacist terms, the moment you start thinking that, only a certain identity, a certain ethnicity has rights, exclusive rights, a certain ethnicity has claims on the entire land, is a moment when you get us to where we are today. What we need to see is that everybody realize that, things must be shared, rights must be achieved and granted equally. There are no discrimination. There are no better people than others. We are all the children of God. We are all chosen in some way. And in any political arrangement, we all must be protected by the same law, the same constitution. That's the issue. And that's exactly what started and came our way. What came our way was not a group of people who want to live in the middle of us and with us. And by the way, Palestine historically was open to people coming and going. I mean, we are, and many stories of Jewish people who were prosecuted in Europe came to Palestine before the events, and they were received with open arms. The story is when you start thinking that you want to have exclusive rights. When you think, like the current Israeli fanatical ministers with Netanyahu himself fanatical, who really believe in such a mindset of supremacy that they have a divine right to discriminate against us. There we have a problem. And we have a problem of using the Bible, and we are the people of the Bible. Remember, Palestine is the birthplace of Christianity. It was in Bethlehem. Using the Bible, weaponizing the Bible against us, as if God has given land and God was a state agent distributing land. God doesn't do that. God gives land to people equally, and God looks at all people equally. So this is the issue, and the issue has been allowed to fester and fester from the time of the establishment of Israel all the way to the Smotrich and the Ben Gvir and what is happening, which is the actual settler movement taking hold of Israel now. The settler movement inside the occupied territory, inside the West Bank, completely taking over. And the Kahanists, who were designated in the US as a terrorist group only a couple of decades ago, now they are sitting on the cabinet table inside Israel. So this is the real issue, my friend. It's not just about how do we find a formula for people to exist. It's how do we fight and defeat the zero-sum mentality and the zero-sum mindset.
Thank you. Before we move on to the final section of the interview, I just wanted to quickly pick up on one point, just back to the Holocaust, where you mentioned that the solution should have been some sort of cohabitance of Jewish people post-Holocaust in Europe. And correct me if this is a misrepresentation of your point, but do you not think that by asking the Jewish people to remain in the lands in which they were discriminated against and in which mass genocide was committed against them, do you not think that that's also a lot to ask?
I didn't say that. I said the solution was to uproot anti-Semitism, to fight anti-Semitism, to make sure that the Jewish people are protected everywhere, not just in one place. And that is the responsibility of the Western governments. And that was that responsibility during the horrific, unspeakable crimes against the Jewish people throughout history, but particularly during the most heinous of crimes, the Holocaust, should have prompted governments and systems in the West to focus on the root cause of the issue. The root cause of the issue is the hatred to Jews. The root cause of the issue here in Europe and in the West is anti-Semitism. And therefore it is to make sure that Jewish people exist wherever they are with protection and without hatred. But the idea that they only can exist in one land and then the land has its inhabitant population without any regard to the indigenous population have created this unresolved conflict.
I agree.
The Jewish people have the right to be protected and live safely everywhere they are. And I lived in the US long enough to know that there are more Jews in the US than in Israel now. So what do you do with them? So the Jewish people in the US or in Europe have no protection, no rights, and we don't fight anti-Semitism because now they have an exclusive place for the Jewish people. All what we're saying is the West has not dealt with its issues, and then we have become the victims of the victims. We, the Palestinian people, have become the victims of the victims. Now, who are the original victims is the Jewish people. And now we are the victims of the victims. But who is the victimizer? Was it the Palestinian people that did the horrible, heinous crime of the Holocaust? Who did all these crimes and the pogroms? It was here in the West. And therefore, the victimizer has got to have leadership and be true and come up with a realization about the crimes that have been committed against the Jewish people and resolve it and challenge it rather than just export it on others and not deal with it.
Yeah, so just to finish off, I want to talk about the two-state solution that you're advocating for. I think the way that the PLO and the way that Israel officially or non-officially views the two-state solution is quite different. The West Bank is separated into different enclaves. You have Zone A, B, C. The PLO only have control of one part of that. There's different settler enclaves in the West Bank. And for example, Smotrich was talking about the annexation of Gaza. So what does a two-state solution look like to you? And how can you work with an Israel which is basically unwilling to remove settlements in West Bank, as previously stated?
No, Israel is unwilling to do anything. Israel doesn't want a two-state solution, doesn't want a one-state solution, doesn't want any solution. Israel wants a repeat of what they did in 1948, and they are doing it now in Gaza, and they are doing it in a slower fashion in the West Bank. So there is depopulation in Gaza, there is depopulation in the West Bank. The current Israeli political thinking and political class is not where you want them to be vis-a-vis a solution. What we need to do is to recreate the power dynamics and redraw the lines and create leverage so we actually implement a solution rather than call for a solution or negotiate a solution, because we've done enough of calling and enough of negotiating. Having said all that, if you really want to know what is a solution and what could be a solution, just visit the advisory opinion of the International Court of Justice only a few months ago in July. That is the highest court on the globe. That's not any other court. Those are the judges of the world. And they came up with a very clear verdict whereby Israel's presence in the occupied territory is unlawful. Because, by the way, there are some military occupations that could be deemed in a temporary manner as lawful. This is unlawful, the International Court said. It has to end. Israel's colonial settlements in the West Bank and Jerusalem are unlawful and must be dismantled, all of them. And these settlers must go back. And thirdly, all third states must cease immediately to provide any political, legal, or material support for Israel's illegal practices. If we look at that ruling, we'll understand that the solution lies there. Lies first with the third parties to ensure that Israel does not do this. They do not support. And Israel cannot do all what it can do without the West support. It can't without the US bombs that they provide, these 2,000 pounds bombs that drops on the heads of families and neighborhoods in Gaza and in Lebanon and elsewhere. This is the solution. Israel's occupation has got to end. A state of Palestine is established with Jerusalem its capital, all of East Jerusalem its capital, a resolution to the issue of refugees in according with international legality and legitimacy. And Palestinians have the right to be treated equally wherever they are, wherever they live, Equally, discrimination must end against the Palestinians, and that will provide a solution, yes. And I was born in a tented refugee camp as a result of that. I am the son of the Nakba. And now we are the victims of the victims, but who is the victimizer? Was it the Palestinian people?
Could you have seen perhaps a realistic mass integration of Jewish people into Palestine where they would co-inhabit it?
In the Israeli army, there are Muslim soldiers, there are Christian soldiers. This is not about the identity of our oppressors. This is about the fact of our oppression.
What does a two-state solution look like to you, and how can you work with an Israel which is basically unwilling to remove settlements in West Bank?
Many people think the two-state solution is a Palestinian demand. Wrong. The two-state solution is a Palestinian concession. Such a people who have been able to do this despite all that, can you imagine? Can you begin to imagine how Palestine will become such a force of good should Palestine be free?